On the evening of February 6, 2012, the police chief and the vice mayor of Chongqing, Wang Lijun, turned up at the American consulate in Chengdu in an agitated state, telling a tale of corruption and murder that involves one of the most elite political figures in China. Bo Xilai, Chongqing's communist boss, was once seen as a high-flyer type for the top office. As the direct superior of Mr. Wang, Bo had commanded Wang to fight crimes and back society with either legal or illegal means. Done his job well, Wang earned a reputation as a hero gangbuster of China, but also drawn unwanted attention from the media and the black society. After the investigation of the death of a close friend of Bo's family, British businessman Neil Haywood visited the US consulate and sought for asylum instead of telling the truth to the Chinese official or following the legislation passed. China, it is embarrassing that some choose to flee to the US embassy or consulate when an incident is disclosed, especially when it involves the internal affairs of the Communist Party. The incident not only intrigued questions from the public about the Chinese political party, but also intrigued us to ask how the identity of the foreign properties in the country, the US consulate in this case. In the diplomatic area, the term extraterritoriality is used to describe the state of being exempt from the justification of the local law. By using this word, it's easier to clarify the privilege of diplomatic buildings from the local law. The Republic Chinese Army was defeated by the Empire Japanese Army at the end of the siege of Shanghai during the World War II. 400 Chinese soldiers were surrounded in a warehouse. These soldiers retreated to the British concession in occupied Shanghai after 4 days fighting and stayed until Japanese declared war against British. These two cases above, the local lands controlled by external governments both serve as sanctuaries. In some cases, it's rather embarrassing. The city of Rome was at the very center of the glorious Roman Empire as well as the proud of the Italian state. When the Papal state declares its ownership over this land, it becomes the center of the whole Catholic world. Until Rome was occupied by the Kingdom of Italy in 1870 and restored as the capital of Italy. The occupation of Rome in fact annexed the Papal state as well as deprived the ownership from the Pope. So although the Pope still owns the Basilica di San Pietro, as well as some other buildings, the Papal state no longer exists. Very disappointed about what was happening during the occupation, from that moment, the popes began to call themselves the prisoner of Vatican since they refused to move away from their properties. They even gave a name for this embarrassing paradox called La Questione Romana, which means the question of Rome, to summarize the difficulties to define the land of Vatican. This problem was solved in February 11, 1929, with the sign of Latin Treaty between the Pope and Benito Mussolini. In the treaty, several privileges of the Pope, such as the palaces owned by the Pope, or the Italian army has no right to invade these palaces, was stated. The most important thing is the treaty circles a land which is much smaller to the Vatican City-State, but the sovereign military order of Malta only have the ownership of two Lazio dei Ordini di Malta and Villa Malta or di Lolos, but with the extraterritoriality located in Italy instead of the land. SMON is an assembly observer of United Nations instead of a country or a state, known by the rest of the world. In conclusion, the identity of foreign properties in a country is defined by how it is being used by the people. They can be sanctuaries as well as the dilemma remains because of political conflicts. The home team and the team that played away. Keep the balance between the interests of the two parties is a question that was being discussed by the politics as well as the architects.